Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever one you want to take from that, take it. It depends what time you're listening to this at. But welcome to another episode of Behind the Briefcase. Today, we are joined by the one and only Harry Evans. Harry has not only been a creator of businesses and leads from the top, but also it's in a field that is so important, and particularly in this day and age, and that is in marketing as well as other aspects. So we're going to get to find out a lot about Harry as we continue on this journey for the next maybe 45 minutes. We'll see how it goes. So sit back, relax, enjoy, and we'll get into the conversation. So it's good morning for us. So we're doing this very early. We started at 9 a.m. So morning, Harry, how are you?
Yeah, good morning. I say when we jumped on, we started talking about how 9 a.m. is early morning for some people and late morning for others. It's funny how that works.
It is absolutely. My mornings generally do start at 5 a.m. Because I try and get all my things in beforehand that I know if I don't do, won't get done that day. So things like going to the gym or just sitting down and taking some time out, because when 9 a.m. hits, it gets rather hectic. And then it continues throughout the course of the day. So, Harry, give us a brief introduction of yourself.
Yeah, sure. So as you said, my name is Harry, and again, as you referred to earlier, we always give that highlight reel at the start. So let's get that out of the way, and then we'll get into all the other unfortunate stuff after that. So, yeah, I'm the founder of two businesses, both marketing providers. So we have 1225, which specializes in content creation and performance marketing for professional services, heritage brands, and what we call values-led e-commerce businesses. And then we have Care Launch, which provides very similar services, but really exists to tackle the misconceptions of care. And I think, again, similar story to what we were talking about again earlier, referencing it, but we get highlight reels on social, but we also get low light reels on social. And one of the big things that I have seen, having worked in care myself as well, is that you only really see the low light reels of what's happening in care homes and home care businesses, and that is something that we really wanted to work alongside care providers to change and to tell a much more positive news story that maybe doesn't get told. So yeah, two businesses there, heavily focused on content generation. I've been running both of those for 2 years for one year for the other. Prior to that, I've spent the last 13 and a half years working in different marketing companies, learning the craft, and yeah, starting doing all those things that we all have to do, right? Which is I was terrible at school. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to, by all accounts, live the life that your son was living. I'm a diehard Liverpool fan. I would have loved to have played for Liverpool. Thought maybe there was a chance of doing it until I was about 16. Quickly realized it wasn't. Then realized I had to go do GCSEs and A levels. Messed up a lot of them, and decided to just get a job. Got an apprenticeship at a marketing agency, as it happened, and that really was very serendipitous. Like, honestly, I can't tell you the number of job interviews I went to that were just horrific. Like, I went to ones where people didn't know who I was or why I was there. I went to ones where the interview was just like picking up boxes and putting them on a shelf to prove that I had the ability to do that. Turned up at this marketing agency, and there was, the desks were clean and there was Macs on the table, and I was like, I can rough it here, shall we say. Ended up there, yeah, and then 13 years later, here we are.
Just rewinding back a bit on that then, Harry. I mean, probably very similar backgrounds in terms of schooling. I hated school. So years and years and years later, the idea that I went on to do a teaching qualification is beyond belief. Even I still can't figure that one out. But I hated school because I was going to be a professional jockey, and that's all that was on my mindset. So what did I need school for? Did that for a year or so, and then realized that you have to be quite good at riding horses to be a professional jockey. Otherwise you get hurt. So came out of that at that moment in time. It was complete. What the heck do I do now? Landed myself in care, to which I've stayed in it ever since. But marketing's such a speciality. So you would tend to say that people in marketing are normally quite artistic, quite visionary type characters. So did you have that feeling at school? Were you always sort of like inspired and influenced by vision?
To be fair, that is a great question. I think creativity in its traditional sense, definitely not. Like, I used to hate all of the like performance art disciplines and even art at school. Like I guess similar to yourself, like if there was an opportunity to be on a football pitch, I'd rather be doing that
Yeah.
than sat with some paintbrushes. The one thing that I would say is from a very young age, I did have a vision of wanting to build or create something. Like I always felt that one day I would be a business person. Obviously, when you're young, you have no idea what that is.
Yeah.
I always thought it would be, again, never really picturing myself as someone who had the ability to do what I do. Not that I would say it's particularly difficult, but I really wanted to become a. When I was about 15, 16 and decided I unfortunately wasn't going to be the starting right winger for Liverpool, I wanted to become a bricklayer because I could kind of see the transition from that into maybe gathering a group of friends, turning that into a business and growing it from there. And again, similar to yourself, which is like I didn't get on with education, and I feel like many of the things within education are broken. As if I think back to that time, I remember telling the person who was in charge of this that I wanted to do the bricklaying course, and we essentially met with the rejection of no, your results are too good for that, which is absolutely ludicrous. Like if that's the direction someone wants to travel, let them travel in that direction. And that that didn't happen, and I was basically told that you have two options here: go to college to study some kind of like services based discipline, or continue on to do A levels. But yeah, no, I wouldn't say that there was anything in me that had that element of creativity, or just didn't know how to maybe output that creativity. But I did have that vision of wanting to build something. Where that comes from, I don't know. Like I think it's just the associations you make as you're younger, right? Which is, I grew up probably based on your accent closer to your part of the world. So I'm from Flintshire originally, and when I moved from Flintshire to where I'm based now in Northamptonshire, the economic circumstances of those different types of people were quite dramatic. And when you're young, you notice them, right? Like my parents, like, I've never wanted for anything, but my parents lived, like they lived within their means. But my friends, like their dads are driving Bentleys or Range Rovers, and they were going abroad for their holidays, whereas I was going in a caravan to somewhere in North Wales. And the differences in money became quite obvious. And I think that's where maybe that initial drive to try and build something came from.
Do you think, I mean, based on that, because again, very similar. I mean, when I decided that I was no longer going to be fit to be a jockey, I became a care worker, which is one real extreme across the pond to the other. Realistically speaking, part of me wanted to run for the hills after day one, but something made me stay, and thank goodness that I did. But in terms of when you found yourself in that situation where you've come into marketing, what was it that actually made you stick there at that point? And second of all, how long did it take you? I know you mentioned that you were in it for 15 years learning your craft, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But how long was it before you started thinking, I could create something here of my own?
What made me stick at it is a really interesting question. So for the 2 years that I was doing my A levels, so how old are you? Like 16 to 18,
Yeah.
something around that age, something like that. I worked within it. It was more like a retirement village. It was the part of the Richmond Retirement Villages group. I worked there for those 2 years, and whilst I wouldn't describe myself as a care assistant by any means, like I was interacting with the residents every day, and some of them had very, they had dementia, and they were losing some parts of their personalities and becoming different people, and you could see the families really struggling with that, which, like, I can't really comprehend how that would be for a loved one of mine. So to go from that to a world where people weren't passing away and it was just marketing and it was sending emails or it was delivering ads or whatever it may be, for that first year I probably just rode a wave of, this is so unserious. Like we can make mistakes and it's not that bad. We can do these things, we can play, we can have fun, which is much harder to do in the world of care, where I there is definitely a time and place for it, but it's not as frequent as, as in a marketing agency. There was a dartboard, there was a ping pong table, there was a Nintendo Wii at the time that we were playing with. That I think that first year it was probably just gratitude to have been somewhere where it was just way more like you could make mistakes and have fun. Thereafter, I think I was very fortunate that the person who ran that company, he was quite open with his time, and you could quickly see how he had built what he had built. And whilst obviously you have like hindsight is a wonderful thing, and now 2 years in, it's not as easy as people make it look.
Yeah.
But you could see that path of like, well, he did these things, and if I follow these steps, maybe I could achieve something similar. So I think first year just gratitude, and then the second year being able to see how someone else was doing it.
I think that's so important what you just said there, and I think people should really sort of like push when they have the opportunity, and that is a mentorship. So I've always said there's been 3 people in my life, in my business life, who I immediately felt like I needed to be mentored by them. And I worked for them. They were great bosses. I've also had some really bad bosses, but within those 3 mentors, what I was able to see is what would I take from them and what wouldn't I take from them? And then almost tried to create the new version of me that had all the plus points to them, but not the negative points to them. And that's where I always turn around and say that if you have a mentor or there is someone that's going to openly give you their time, don't put a brick wall up against them. Try and figure out exactly who they are and how they got there, and learn from either the mistakes or the successes. You don't have to become that person, but ultimately they will help you to evolve, because I don't believe in leadership that we were born with this great skill to know how to lead people. I think we actually have to create versions of ourselves in order to lead. And so I never look at myself and go, oh, you're the finished article. And the amount of times that I want to give my time to someone to help them, and either they're not really that interested, or it interferes with what they've got on that weekend, and you're sort of like saying, no, I'm offering the options to come and have a round of golf with me. Not that I'm that good, but there's 4 hours we're going to spend on a golf course. Now, if any of the mentors had turned around to me and offered me that opportunity, I'd have been cancel everything. I'm going. I need 4 hours with this guy.
Yeah, definitely. Like there's for me, there's 2 people who like immediately come to mind, and both of them. So whilst it's been in quite a long time, like the 13 to 15 years prior to what we're doing now, that was only with 2 different companies. So I was at both companies for quite a long time, which again, like I'm not really young anymore, but I was young when I was doing those things. And that's quite rare, right? You get a lot of people who move from opportunity to opportunity, which is not a bad thing. But I was with both of those companies for between 5 to 8 years for both of them. And I got very close to the founders of those two companies. And I agree, but I think the one thing that I want to call out there is, because I think it's an easy mistake to make, is that mentor relationship doesn't have to be as black and white as people make it sound as well. Because I think quite often what I've definitely seen in, like, as I've grown into the position I'm in now, and I'm lucky enough to have a tiny little bit of a following on platforms like LinkedIn and things like that, is people will come and just say, like, can I be mentored with you? And I'd say, well, it's not as black and white as that. It's not really how it works. And it was very much for those first couple of years just learning by osmosis. Like any opportunity to work with that person, you just take it.
I think that's key. So when I mentioned mentored, because I get that a lot as well from people in LinkedIn, sort of like reaching out. The people that mentored me didn't know they were mentoring me. It's just I put a label to that. I just sort of like found a way to, what I'd say is, to get in. So to be seen. And I think that's quite a big statement. I have many people that work for me in my businesses, but how do you get noticed? How do you get my attention? That makes me look at you and go, there's something there, and I'd love the opportunity to spend with it. So I think for the audience here, Harry, I mean, in terms of what advice would you give people that maybe are in business now and they don't feel like they're getting noticed? In other words, to get noticed, to get the opportunity to spend time with that person.
The problem is that, like, there's like the devil on my shoulder and the angel on my shoulder that tell me that the advice that I always give here is either good or bad, which is like, I shoveled shit. That I would work every day of the week. I would do the extra hours. I'd, like, for those first couple of years, like, I'd miss the Liverpool games, and there's not many things that would mean that I miss a Liverpool game. And like I would do what I had to do to basically not really be noticed, but to do a good job. And I find that doing that good job, or going above and beyond, or doing something a little bit different and taking that risk, they're the things that get you noticed. I think again, like, the last team that I led was 50 plus people before we started our first business. And the people who asked to be noticed were never the people who got noticed. They were the people who if anything, being honest, like they'd become more of a frustration. Like, but the people who were heads down, getting it done, trying to make a difference, they're the people that like naturally I gravitate towards. And then I'd be like, yes, let's do this together. Let's work on this. Like, here's some advice on, whatever I can offer advice on.
I absolutely get that. And I'm kind of like, I don't want to sort of like diminish people's thoughts on things, but when I see things like, oh, you can become a millionaire by working a 4 hour day, I still sit there and go, how? How is that possible? Because I just look at the hours that I put in and the graft that I put in to get noticed. Now it wasn't just about, hi, I'm here. It was about having ideas, no matter how stupid they were, and taking them forward and saying, what do you think would happen if we done this? Or by taking risk in certain areas. But also, if I look at it, in the offices I'm in now, I'm normally the last person in the office. Now, there is a couple of staff members that are normally just about 20 minutes behind me, or they've left before. Now, I've also got what I class as my 1 minute to 5 bolters. Now, the 1 minute to 5 bolters to me are getting noticed in the wrong way. But the ones that are here till 6, and I'm not the devil and the angel is the best way to say it, because in a PC world today, it's not right to turn around and say you should work more hours. But I think it's so important that people understand that to get noticed in the right way, you have to go above and beyond what the job actually is. If you want someone to look at you and go, I'm really interested, because if this office is now down to 3 people at 6 o'clock at night, there's more chance I'm going to go speak to the other 2 people at the end of a day than there is I'm going to go speak to everybody during the day. So I kind of sort of like try and push that to the younger audience, that don't bolt at 1 minute to 5 because you're getting noticed.
Yeah, I think you definitely have to decide what you want, because I agree that like the people who do leave like 1 minute to 5 and things like that, if work and like professional growth isn't their priority in life, that's fine. It sets
Yeah.
that scene but for me, up until now, and I can't see it stopping, is that like it's one of the main priorities in my life, and it was at that early age when I first started as well. But I think what you're saying resonates so much. Like, it got to some, most of the time I was working with some kind of purpose, but some days I just stick around because I know if I stay here till 10 past 6, most people are gone. And at some point, his name, you won't mind mentioning it, his name was Roger. I know he'd come out of his office, and if he's having a bad day or a good day, whatever it may be, like he'll either rant, he'll vent, or he'll tell me something, and then you just pick up on things. Then you build a bit of a connection, and then you're the person he then comes to when he's getting frustrated about something. And if you're the person he fixes it, then that's another step of just building that relationship. So yeah, it's a tough one, but I can advocate for it more. If you're a young person who wants to grow your career and you're working in a business where someone is doing kind of what you want to be doing, time is everything.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I want to sort of like go back. So we've had 15 years. We've worked 2 jobs in marketing. You've learned your craft. Learned your skill. You've made a decision that you are going to go and do this on your own. Talk me through where that came from and that time in your life.
I'd moved to the second business. I'd grown to associate director level, which when you're in a smallish company like 75-ish people is really the highest you can go without buying in. And so I was on a very good salary. I was incredibly comfortable. I had the nice car. It's probably that golden handcuffs problem, right? Which is like you don't really have a reason to leave other than that just little thing inside you saying like you could be doing this, or you could do this differently, or what would you do? And that had been burning brighter and brighter for about a year. And I think the inflection point that came is honestly in some ways quite nerdy. So in what we do, like a big part of it is search engine optimization, and the way that people search has fundamentally changed over the last 2 years with things like ChatGPT and TikTok. And we were of a size of an agency where pivoting to do something like that was actually quite difficult, because you have teams and teams of people and salaries of people that wouldn't be needed if you pivoted into that direction. So the question I asked myself was like, do I want to work through that here? Whereas I've already kind of been through 2 or 3 restructurings, or do I want to go for it? And I think the final thing that tripped me over was I pitched the idea to a man called Brendan, who was like my first ever manager, and we'd worked together for those 15 years. And he didn't say it was a bad idea. And I was like, oh, it's the first time you haven't told me that the thing I want to do is stupid. Let's go do that. And the time that we decided to do that was 1225, hence the name of the first business. And we haven't looked back. But yeah, I think it was very much the first time I'd pitched something and he didn't say, not sure about that. And he just went, yeah, I get it. And yeah, everything that I'd done for those X number of years had built up to that point, but it still didn't make it any less terrifying.
No, because it's a big difference, isn't it? It's the risk taking, So similar to yourself, I was in a good job, and it could have been a job for life if I'd wanted it. Probably got to the highest point in my career that I could potentially get. And then it was sort of like one day saying, let's just have a go at this. I know I'd created so many businesses for other people. I had that belief in myself. I knew I had the work ethic to do it. And I had a small amount of capital behind me to actually think, if you're going to do this, it has to be now. But my goodness, in those first 6 months, did I crap myself a number of times because there's just so many things that you're not taught or you didn't realize. And then I kind of quickly discovered there's a lot of vultures out there that want to pick your money from you and take it. So it was such a steep learning curve of how quickly money can evaporate into thin air as you aim towards your goal. So
no, we were really lucky, which is the fact that if you've been doing something in a very similar field for that long a time, you do have people that move across. What was quite interesting though is the people, the companies that did come and did like kind of raise their arm and say we'd love to work with you were people we'd never have expected. They were actually people from 7, 8, 9 years ago that every now and then you'd like check in on and just say like how you doing, ping them a message, or you'd see them at a golf day or whatever it may be. But like they weren't the people that I would have assumed it was the people I was working with the day before I left that would be like, yeah, let's come across. And it's not to say that hasn't happened in some instances 2 years down the line, but I was really surprised at where those initial clients came from. From there, like you get to a point where you hit the ceiling of how far your existing network can take you, right? And you have to do all the things that for most people you don't like doing. Like you have to put yourself out there, you have to go networking, you have to market yourself, you have to talk about your businesses. But yeah, those first couple, like again, it kind of glorifies or simplifies how easy it was. Like if I hadn't been doing this for 15 years, I wouldn't have had clients to move across. But because I was very lucky to bring some people across.
I mean, in terms of going back to those early days, Harry, what were particular moments that you remember that you learned very quickly from?
Yeah, that's an easy question to answer, which is probably similar to yourself. That it's all the mistakes. It's not the actual learnings. It's not sitting down and watching how someone does something or watching a YouTube video. It was all of the mess ups that I made in those early years. And there was so many, like from little things. Like, so the first year or so, I was quite heavily involved in email marketing. So occasionally I would send an email to people and the link wouldn't go to where it's supposed to go, or there would be a typo and those things. And again, depending on the client that you were sending it for, was either a small deal or a huge deal. Like one of our clients was the Allianz global investment side of their business, and obviously if you put a full stop or a comma in the wrong place, it's quite a big difference to what's happening. So there's definitely those times. There was, I think the one thing that stands out more than anything actually is like I'm diagnosed with OCD, so it's nowhere near as bad as it used to be. When I was a kid, it was pretty bad. And as soon as I turned like 16, it kind of just disappeared. Then I got to like 19, 20, and this is how old I am now. But like GDPR started to come in, and I was told that across our client base, I needed to get all the email marketing GDPR compliant. I know what I meant. And I was young and naive, and I just didn't do anything. I just thought, it can't be that important. I'll just forget about it. And then it got to the point where it was like 2-3 weeks before it came in, and none of our clients were ready. And this, like, the only way I can describe it is that it's like this little thing in the back of your head, and it came back. And I was young, I didn't really understand it, and it was telling me like, this is like, it wasn't, but it was telling me like, this is so bad. Like if you mess this up and we start sending emails to people, like all of our clients are going to get hundreds of millions of pounds of fines, and ultimately the business isn't going to pay it, and then you're going to have to go to prison. And like I had like this whole loop in my head of like how bad it was.
Yeah.
And like I remember like it was the first time ever that I'd kind of just broken. I just gave up, and I just messaged my boss and I said to him, I've messed this up. Like, I can't do anything. I'm sorry. I'm just not going to come to work. You can forget about me. And like I remember him calling me and just being like, dude, it's not that serious. Like, yeah, you've messed up, but it's fine. Like, no one's gonna die. You're not gonna go to prison. Like, we can fix it. He's like, yeah, we'll miss the deadline, but if we just apologize and tell people why and we'll deal with it, we'll move forward. And I think that one thing has kind of led me to like just do everything that we do now in terms of risk taking and anything like that, which is in many ways everything we do is just not that serious. And like, is it important in some ways? Yes. Does it, like, if someone's giving you money, you want to try and turn it into more money for them? Of course you do. But 9 times out of 10 in most industries, like it's not life or death. Like, you'll live to fight another day. And that has just helped me with like stress management, which I think again is something that, like, I see it in my younger siblings, like some of them are a lot younger than me, is the like adversity and resilience and things like that. Like, you don't really have to come up against much if you go through the schooling system these days. It is very much like everything's glorious, rose-tinted glasses, the world's going to be kind to you. And it's just not. And it does get stressful. It does get difficult. There are times when, you know, like when we started our business, Brendan had just had his first child, I think, at the time, or maybe a second child. I should really know the answer to that question. But like the pressure that we felt to be like, well, if we don't get clients, like, he's got a kid, like, what do we do about that? Like, that's a very serious thing. But having learned how to cope with stress in a far better way I feel like I can tackle most things that come at me, and it's all because of that one stupid thing that I made feel absolutely massive.
I think you just touched on something very important here. I've been doing a lot of reflection on this myself, and that word resilience. So to me, resilience is built up over failure. So I know people don't like the word failure. I personally don't mind it, right? I'm proud sometimes to say that I failed, because at least I tried. But ultimately, those failures and similar, I think so many people at your level will resonate with this, that you always at the beginning think it's catastrophic. It's the worst case scenario. That we're going bankrupt. The banks are going to take my house. I've got to tell everybody I'm going to be making them redundant. It's the worst case. And then that doesn't happen. And then I think what occurs over time, and particularly as a leader, is that when everybody else goes through that period of thinking it's catastrophic, you're the one that's able to turn around and say, actually, it's not going to be catastrophic. This is bad. We can do something about it. But here's kind of like the scenario and how it's going to play out, worst case. But it's not going to be as bad as what you think it's going to be. And I think that brings a calmness. So it's resilience, and I think maturity as well. But you've got to experience these things in order to build that. And I think that's why we actually become better and better at leading the longer that we do it. There's so many times I thought the world was about to end, quite literally. And I still can get those moments, but I've learned how to, in the same way that you're saying, so like take yourself into a little room and have a little word with yourself and try and calm down, because it's not going to help going out there and telling them, we're done, you may as well pack your bags.
Yeah, I think it's just it's your threshold. Like, you can just tolerate more, right? It's like going to the gym or whatever it is. Like, the more you lift, the more your muscles can cope with the load. And I think it's the same thing. And I'm not saying that you should, and I think it's easy to interpret that as like you're just constantly in like a threshold of stress. And I'd say it's actually far from that, which is the more your resilience improves, like, it just takes so much more to actually get you to a point where you're in that stressed mindset. And it's tough. Like, don't get me wrong, you're right. Those first couple of years, like, every failure feels like the end of the world. And it can be like, oh God, it takes so much from you. That I reckon I aged the first, like, I got to looking the age I am now in about 2 years, from like 18 to 20 learning. But after that, it gets so much easier.
I've kind of been saying this to a generation that's probably below me at this moment in time. Obviously, we're going through a very economic crisis period, and predictions show it's only going to get worse over the next couple of years, and potentially into that recession. But it's like, for some people, they're facing it for the first time. And I'm sort of like saying, listen, people, we managed to get through COVID and we're still here. There was a recession just before COVID. There was the housing crisis that occurred. I said, so it's not always been these boom times of fantasticness and all of a sudden we're crashing. And I think what I'm sort of like saying is there's the idea now. There's two sayings that I love and I learned and adopted really. One was this too shall pass. I love that. Which basically for the audience means that if you're going through really good times, don't worry, they'll end and it'll go crap again. But if you're going through really crap times, it will end at some point and you'll go through the good times again. And then the second one is, so that stops you from panicking because there's always an end sight. But the second one is to hold fast and steer strong. So in other words, know what it is that you're trying to achieve during this period of time. And if you've got to batten down the hatches, batten them down, but hold tight because you are going to get to that promised land. You just need leadership to steer the ship. So with regards to that, when I'm sort of like talking to people, I'm saying it's not catastrophic. It depends what you do now as a result of that. And that leads me on to probably where you're at now, because you obviously had 1225, which was content creation, putting the message out there. But then you kind of started, well, you moved then and you started Care Launch. So that's a natural progression onto, well, because looking at Care Launch, would I be right in saying, like you said at the beginning, you want to give the positive messages out there, but ultimately what you're trying to steer is a company's ability to be able to attract either clients or attract staff.
Yes.
So you kind of sort of like putting yourself out there and saying, not only can we do the content creation side of this, but actually we can fulfill it by generating new leads, which will transpire into your business. So that is, I mean, in terms of that model must be something that a lot of companies really had to move towards, particularly with COVID, and particularly with budget cuts that were occurring and the need to go after the private market because of low pay fee rates in local authorities. So have you found that that's an area where people are pushing towards, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is on the same lines as what you were saying, which is, unfortunately, I've been around long enough to see, as the economy sways, people's marketing budgets sway as well. And like one of the first things that gets cut is marketing. And one of the things that we quickly learned pre-COVID, like when we were in those like difficult financial times pre-COVID, is that as budgets were cut, more focus was placed on what I describe as performance marketing. So less of the fluffy stuff, more on the, if I'm going to put X amount of pounds in, what am I going to get out of it? And it needs to be more than the amount that they put in, ideally at some level of profitability. So since then, we've like always tried to have a bit of a performance mindset on things. But Care Launch is probably what I would describe as it's our second opportunity to kind of do everything right. Because to your point, when you launch a business, there's so much that you just don't know. And the problem is that you didn't know that you needed to know it. So it's not like you go away and learn it before you start. Like you only learn them as you go start the thing and build it. And Care Launch, I feel, was our opportunity to take all of the learnings from 1225 and put them into practice in a niche, but also an industry that genuinely means something and makes a difference and fulfills you in a way that maybe working with some other types of companies doesn't, which is one. But it's also in an industry that I'd argue comes under attack quite a lot in two different ways, both from a perceptions perspective, but also from a funding perspective. And I need to be careful how I word this because I don't want it to sound patronizing in any way, but I think we're unaware really of what performance marketing really was. Like when we had those initial conversations with people, it was, we do marketing, we post on Instagram, we post on Facebook, our marketing is solid. And it's like, that's not the case. As local authorities can't start meeting, you know, the fees that you need to be charging to deliver the care that you're charging, and you need to have that shift towards finding families and residents who are private payers. You need this performance marketing because you need to know, well, if I put X amount in, how many inquiries is that going to bring me? Of those inquiries, how many will actually move to move-ins? Because you can't afford to just put your very minimal budget into something and not know what's coming out. And that has definitely been a shift for people that we're having conversations with. I think it's still a relatively new concept for many care providers, but yeah, like I said, I think it was our opportunity to do something that we felt was needed, but also could make a real difference. And what has surprised me so much is like how meaningful the conversations are. So again, we do a lot of the top line stuff as well. We do a lot of video creation, content creation to put that content out with a purpose, though. I think is important. The content that we put out is designed to do something, whether that is to generate brand awareness on social, or if it is to help convert a family going through their care seekers customer journey to make an inquiry, then to become a move-in. Like, the content has purpose, but hearing how passionate the care assistants are, the staff members are, the home managers are about the work that they're doing, and even when we sit down with a family member and like how much, quite often the feeling that they mention is guilt, like how guilty they felt about having to place their loved one into a care home, and how like that has changed as they've seen their loved one basically get a second lease of life and live more comfortably. Like every day those conversations are with me now, and it's taking it from just a performance marketing focus to being something that genuinely, like, I won't shut up about. Like, I'm so proud of what the team is doing, because it is so meaningful.
I think in terms of marketing, I think the bigger companies, because they had the budgets and private equity funded for the majority of them, they grasp the importance of marketing right from the offset. And the smaller sort of like providers of care homes, you're right, they really only just started to use social media probably in the last 3 or 4 years to start to put some content out there. But actually, without the analytics behind the content, how do you know if the content's actually doing anything? And I think certainly when I speak to a lot of companies, I'm always saying, well, are you split testing anything? How do you know what time to put the post out? How do you know the audience that you're trying to attract? If you're going to boost a post, do you know where you're boosting it to? Do you know what SEO is? Do you know what keyword searches are? You kind of, even to a point now where you're saying, Google, the first, if I type a care home name into Google, the first thing that's actually coming up is Google reviews now. And yet most people aren't even looking at that. They're still talking about other areas. And you kind of try and get them into the mindset of be the person that's looking for a care service for the mom and dad. Are you an information giver? Can you give them, you've got people, quite rightly said, there is a guilt, but there's also I haven't got a clue what I'm doing situation that's occurring. All of a sudden they're getting tasked with, well, do you have power of attorney? Do you know what the threshold is for the local authority to kick in? Can you get funding from other places, higher attendance allowance, etc.? So they're looking for an expert. And if that expert gives them the information, then they're more likely to build the relationship with them, trust them, and say, I want to come to your place. So I'm often saying to people, your content is not, here's Valerie eating an ice cream down the park, hashtag we love the sunshine. And it's that's the bit that I think you're absolutely right in terms of performance management. And I think with the introduction of AI and things like that now, again, you're going to have a lot of care services that are 10 years away from even starting to look at this when really they need to be on the ball now. What would your advice be to any care service provider out there in terms of marketing?
The one thing that we always come back to, and it's just going to sound like I'm echoing what you're saying, is that whilst you may never have had to put a loved one in care, you're interacting with these people every day you understand the mindset that they're in, like I say, whether it's guilt, it's stress, or it's just being purely uninformed, because ultimately no one thinks about care until they have to think about care, and then suddenly you've got anywhere from 1 to maybe 8 weeks to make a decision, and then it's happening. Is you can put yourselves in the mindset of someone, and you have to become the authority that they can turn to get the help, to get the reassurance, and to get the trust. You know how to do it because you're doing it every day. You just don't realize that you're doing it. So try and start putting the things that you're doing every day into places where people can find them, because I think that again is what happens. Is that, think about, if you're a home manager, you're a care assistant, or maybe you're in head office and you're in charge of the marketing, whatever it may be, is whenever you have a problem or a question, or you want the answer to something, you know where you're going to turn. You're going to turn to TikTok, you're going to turn to Google, you're going to turn to ChatGPT. If you know that that's what you're doing, chances are that's what everyone else is doing as well. So get your content in those places and create that content with purpose to help people. And if you do that, naturally the right metrics will start to follow. But I wouldn't even worry about tracking those metrics first. Like one of the big things, and I know you sent a prep doc before this call, for example, as to what would advice be to certain people at certain stages of their career growth. My advice when it comes to this stuff is pick a problem or a challenge you're going to solve. Is it funding? Is it when should someone move into a care home, or how should someone move into whatever that problem is that you're going to solve? Just start solving that problem, and then we can worry about the metrics later.
Because I think I was trying to explain this the other day to someone, because we have a marketing team. And obviously, when you get marketing and sales wants to blame marketing because they're not getting enough leads, and marketing wants to blame everybody else because they're not getting enough content to drive through. But everybody thinks the wonderful world of marketing should be able to wave a magic wand and the business becomes huge, because all they've ever heard about is marketing budgets. And I was sort of like explaining to the marketing team and the sales team that marketing is basically they're creating a shop window. The person's going to walk past, see the shirt or the dress that they like, and make a decision as to whether they want to walk through the front door. The minute they've walked through the front door, it's no longer marketing's responsibility. That's the sales team that picked that up. And I was saying this to a care home. I said, marketing could drive 50 leads to your door, but if you don't pick up the phone and build a relationship and rapport with that person and take them to the next step of them coming in and be accomplished at doing the show round and answer the questions that they have and do it in a timely fashion, then the marketing's an absolute waste of time, because someone's seen the shirt, seen the dress, walked into the shop and nobody would speak to them. So they walk straight back out the shop.
Yeah, for sure. But sometimes I do feel that, and it's controversial because I'm a marketer, but marketing has itself to blame as well. So one of the things that I'm really proud of that we do is we have this group called the Care Marketing Collective, which is essentially a community for junior care marketers who are learning their craft in the care industry. And one of the things we do is we send a weekly newsletter with just marketing advice or anecdotes or strategy tips, whatever it could be. And the one that we sent on Monday was actually about how it is easy to assume your job is done once that person walks into the home. But unless the family's moving in, your job probably isn't done. And you have to have that two-way communication, because if you can go back to the person who's doing the show round and saying, great, how did it go? What questions did they ask? You go, great, that question's coming up a lot. I'm going to go create a piece of content that answers that question. So next time, either the question's answered before they already walk in, or you can say to them, hey, like, you asked me this question, I'm going to follow up with email because our team has created a piece of content on that. And I think you have to have that two-way. I don't think, like you say, marketing wants to blame sales, sales wants to blame marketing, but really, if you're in marketing, you're in sales, and if you're in sales, you're in marketing. Absolutely. You can't really get away from it.
Absolutely. That's what I've often said. You're both doing the same thing. You just got one that's the attraction model and one that's the closing model. But ultimately, if you're a good salesperson, you're a natural marketer. If you're a good marketer, you're a natural salesperson. So it's sort of like getting them to see that there isn't a divide there. They work together in tandem to actually drive business. So I love it. You mentioned there about marketing innovators, etc. Is that something that you do for your clients, or is that something that's available to people in care?
So it's basically available to anybody who is either a care marketer or maybe wants to become a care marketer. Because again, that is a progression route that we do see, right? Which is someone starts as a care assistant, then maybe they move into marketing, or they move into sales, or maybe they go into a different role. But there is that kind of career path that does happen. So at the moment, it's in its infancy. So we have about 100 care providers subscribed, and at the moment, it's really taking the form of a newsletter and a WhatsApp group. So there's a WhatsApp group where people can exchange ideas, and then there's the newsletter that Brendan, the co-founder of Care Launch, sends every week. As we move into next year, it's going to turn into a quarterly event as well, because I do think that one of the things I actually wrote down in the prep doc as well is when it comes to networking, like LinkedIn's okay, but real FaceTime and speaking to people, meeting them, learning, sharing stories, like that is the real value. So the Care Marketing Collective will become a quarterly event from probably March next year. But yeah, it's basically designed to help anybody who is starting their career or maybe in the first couple of years of their care marketing career.
I've got 3 people that will want to sign up for that straight away. Pretty much about 2 offices down from me. So I'll touch details for that. There is so much of an art to learn. I think what care homes are really great at doing, and they should be, is delivering care. Brilliant operators. But actually, in this day and age, you've also got to be the other side of it as well. And that is good at customer relations, good at sales, good at actually communicating and networking, because a lot of care services and businesses in general are going to have to push more towards networking, things like open days, etc., like that. You know, you get an inspection, the staff have got to be, they should be ploughing the inspectors with lots of questions, really network with them and engage with them, and show a willingness to passion. Don't run and hide in the bloody wardrobe. So yeah, there's lots of things. I think that as an area, particularly as a training company ourselves, we've looked at, okay, you've got all your statutory and your mandatory that you've got to do, but what is your business plan looking like, and how does your training align to that business plan? So if you've got a growth strategy, how are you growing your staff within that strategy to help deliver that growth? And therefore, what different forms of training can we take on in order to do that, that's going to help with that? And it's the same with marketing. Like you said, what is the solution? What's the problem that you're trying to bring the solution to? Solve it, and now shout about it. So the future then, where are we 3-4 years from now, Harry?
So obviously we have the two businesses. 1225 is going through a full rebrand at the moment to have a new name, have a new face, and kind of do things properly that we should have done the first time around. But I think the area that I'm incredibly excited about is what the future looks like for Care Launch, and we I think are probably following the kind of natural business progression, which is normally businesses start as service and then they try and at some point transform into product as well. And we are working on, I think it fits quite nicely with what you were saying, is that there are large groups out there and many of them are private equity backed, and some of the things that are accessible to them right now just aren't accessible to smaller providers, and even smaller providers that have 20-30 homes, maybe it's not accessible. And now we have many people who come to us, and one of the first things we speak to them about is, look at your shop window, your website. It barely meets the needs of someone 10 years ago. Like, how is it going to meet the needs of someone in 5 years' time, 10 years' time? You need that solid foundation for growth. But then we have the conversation about how much a website would cost to build properly from the ground up. And I'll be honest, it's not an insignificant amount of money. It takes time to do it properly. So one of the things that we're hoping to launch for probably the start of 2026 is the first ever Care Launch website, which is a product where you can come in, you can tell us the number of homes that you have, you can give us your brand identity, or if you don't have one, we'll develop one with you. And then we essentially apply those colors and that branding to a template. And then your new website will be live, and you pay a very small monthly fee to keep that website running, and it's yours forever to use. But it makes good conversion rate optimization, good best practices, SEO modified, all of those things that weren't really accessible to smaller providers. It makes it very accessible to them. So that's coming next year, and from there we'll see where it goes. But I am basically just wanting to invest more and more of my time over the next 3-4 years into Care Launch to see where it takes us.
Okay, Harry, how do people get in contact with you with regard to Care Launch? Because I know a lot of businesses out there are going to listen to this, and you know, they may have dabbled in this area before, but I think what you're offering there is that unique partnership of finding out about the business. You're not just a jobs board or a care board. You kind of, we need to get the content right, we need to get the message right, we need to know what it is that you're trying to achieve, and then we need to work on that. I know myself, I've worked with many of those companies, and I've always really wanted to work with one that I've seen they had a real vested interest in wanting to get to know the business and looking at targets that the business is setting itself going forward and how it's going to align with that. So I'm certainly picking up the conversation with you after this in relation to that. But in terms of how do other businesses get hold of you?
Yeah, it's really simple. Just go to carelaunch.uk, and there's two things that you'll find there really, which is we try to be really transparent about what we do, because again, I think in your prep doc, one of the first lines that you put about was that basically everybody's skeptical of agencies, and ultimately we are an agency. And when you say words like SEO and PPC and you're at a networking event, that is normally the first thing you say that word, they turn their back and they've run down the road, because I understand it can feel a bit snake oily. So when you go to the site, there is a whole section explaining how we do what we do for every single discipline. So if anybody wants to go and maybe just educate a little bit before reaching out so that you don't feel like we are trying to sell you things that aren't real, watch those videos. But the second thing that you'll see when you go there is on the right hand side, about 5 seconds after you load the page, the pop-up will come up, and that is how you can subscribe to the newsletter, where we share basically insights on what we do, marketing trends. We partner with people like Lottie, where they give us their data. So there's a lot going on there as well. But basically, anything you want to learn about Care Launch, go to carelaunch.uk.
Okay, there's a couple more questions I've got to ask before we round this off, and they're very important to me. And I know we have similar backgrounds, and let's see if we have similar thoughts on this. But you obviously have a business partner, Brendan, that you've talked about. How important is it for you to have had him in your life throughout this journey?
Yeah. So I'll come back to the answer in a second. But yeah, I think the funny thing that both my wife and Brendan's wife say to each other is, like, let's say my wife's called Alina. Let's say Alina and I are having we don't argue, we have disagreements. Let's say Alina and I are having a disagreement, and she'll go to me, "You wouldn't speak to Brendan like that." So Brendan is very much seen as my well, basically just my husband in many ways. But on a serious note, I wouldn't be where I am now without him for many reasons. He was my first ever manager. He was the first person to basically show me the world of marketing, and he was also the person who basically put me in the corner to not let me get away with not doing my own thing anymore. Like, if he hadn't have said, like, "You've been speaking about this for so long, this is the first idea you've had that makes sense, let's just go and do it," I genuinely don't think I would have done it. So without him, the two businesses we have now wouldn't have existed. But I think more than that, yeah, it is lonely. And the thing that I find is that, and my wife will say the same, is she'll be there at 12, 1, 2 a.m., when we're just going to bed because it's been a long day and I'm moaning about something, and she'll comfort me and say the right things, but she doesn't really feel it, right? Because she's not in it. Whereas having someone who's in it with you, if you just want to get on the phone to him, and basically, I don't need him to say anything sometimes. I'm just going to go on a 15-minute rant about how crap the world is, how crap we are, how everything's failing. And he just goes, "Yeah, cool. Let's just go grab a beer," whatever it may be. Like, my advice to anybody would be, don't do it alone. It's way more fun, but it's also almost absolutely needed.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I've got to have those key people around me who are, how would I put it? We're all in the same bed, so no one's getting out of it at any time soon, and therefore you all have that vested interest. And I think it creates that, what I call, business family. And I'm a ranter like you, and the world is going to end, so someone needs to just pin me down and say, "It's not." Okay, I mean, you talked about the prep document. They give me these prep documents. You can't really see it there, to go through, and I have a quick brief of them, and you've almost answered everything that is on there. So obviously you've done your prep well, and I didn't. So would it put you off telling people to go start their own business, your life journey?
No, never.
The rewards outweigh the pains.
The way that I would describe it is that I think you said it as well, though, about the fact that the good times don't last, the bad times don't last. But what I would say is you feel both of them so much stronger. Like, if you get a win, like, the win, like, I've closed deals before, 2, 3, 4 million pound deals for other businesses. Feels great. You get a pat on the back, and maybe you go for a beer or whatever. Like, when you close that for yourself, the feeling is that it's incredible. And it's the same when something goes wrong. Like, definitely you feel it more. But to have that passion in your life is, like, way more meaningful.
I love it. And Harry, me and you have never met, I don't believe, before today. But I've absolutely loved speaking to you, and I definitely want to speak to you some more as we go forward, because there's so many things that we have in common, and it's just brilliant to you talk about networking before, to actually talk to someone who knows some of the pains that you may have gone through, but also the successes when they come, and how you can deal with them. So we'll definitely pick up conversations, and I would advise anybody else when they're looking at the world of marketing, and how to get those leads and how to transition from local authority to private paying clients, that you reach out to Harry as well, and let's get this ball rolling. That's what these podcasts are for. So yeah, absolutely loved it, Harry. You're going for lunch. You've got 3 individuals, past or present, that you can take. This is going to be good insight to see who you are. I wonder if you'll say Brendan and your wife. Let's see.
Yeah, I have lunch with them all the time, so you might as well mix it up for one off, right? So for me, I'd go with either, depending on which one of them can make it, Rory McIlroy or Tiger Woods. I'd love them to fix my high slice, but also to figure out, like, I don't know if you've ever been to like watch professional golf, but the focus it must have. I can't cope if my mates are talking behind me. How they do that in front of hundreds of people, I have no idea. So I'd love to learn that from them. I'm a massive Formula One fan, and like when I started watching, Lewis Hamilton was the guy, and he always has been the guy for me. So I'd love to have him around the table as well. And then finally, there's a very famous marketer called Rory Sutherland, who his ability to talk and storytell is something that I just wish I had. Like, I feel like I start to talk, make a point, and then the point goes on for too much. Like, he can bring a half-hour point back round and make it make sense, and you've been listening for that full half hour. So I imagine he'd be incredibly entertaining.
Absolutely. Love that. And all influences within your personal life and professional life as well. I'd definitely go with the golfing one because I have the slice that it's sort of like could take out anybody. So I'm with you on that. I don't even know whether they can fix it. I've tried lessons, but we'll see. But yeah, loved it. Harry, thank you very much. And for all you guys that have listened in, people that have listened in, thank you very much for listening to another episode of Behind the Briefcase. And we will see you next time.